wherever you are. I'm more than happy to start another stream for you guys. This time I will be continuing with the alternative Zoraida set. And for today, I will be working on three lovely ladies, also known as Witches of the Woods. And those are super nice miniatures that are just full of character. Really nice sculpts there. They come pre-assembled. So the only thing I needed to do with them prior to painting, to base coating them, was just to clear the mold lines, fill in some of the recesses, not too many, uh, and the detail here is really fine. Let me just zoom in on some of the facial details here. Those ladies are so full of character. This one looks like she's grinning. She has like a branch with a apple coming out of her eye. Yeah, that's the one. And she's also holding, I guess, rotten apple or poisoned apple, right? That would go with the fairy tale vibe. This is the other one, which looks like she's turning into a tree in a very dynamic fashion. So she has this oversized tree arm, and the pumpkins on the bases come with the set. There's also a skull, and again, the facial details are really nice here. And this is my favorite. This is this lady who is just throwing a pumpkin, making sure her skirt doesn't get wet in the mud. And I love the physique of this model. And I really like the fact that this is just a, well, wholesome looking model. I really like the approach here. And before I start, let me just show you guys the finished version of the models. Hello, the finished version of models that I painted last time. So first off is this lovely Battlefield kettle, and this one took me, well, a stream and a half, I would say, to finish. Plus, I did the base here offline, and this is the alternative version of Bad Juju. It has this lovely book which says Hocus Pocus, and plenty of detail. So last week I did the bat, the chicken legs. It was just pure fun, and also I did the prince. Well, thank you. Glad you like it. So that's the Prince Totem. And this one is a super tiny miniature, which is the alternative version of Voodoo Doll. And it's so tiny that it's hard to get it into focus. All right, there it is, perfect focus. But it's a fairly simple sculpt, but it's so full of character. No wonder it's called the Prince. And I had a blast, really had a blast painting blue here, and the golden crown, green eyes, the darker underbelly. So it's nicely sitting in the middle of a swampy pool with one pumpkin partly submerged next to it. It was a really good exercise in painting the different shades of blue onto a miniature. So probably my favorite for now of the set. And the lady, the Zoraida. I like the fact that I think it makes me think of old classic Disney movies, like the, I would say, 80s maybe, Sleeping Beauty. And there is just so much character here. She's grinning, she's holding a poisoned apple. That's why I painted it like it's so that it looks like poison is leaking out of it or dripping into it. Then there's this large pumpkin on the base. And color scheme, this is probably mainly inspired by the official artwork. So I made sure to make it look slightly dirty. So those are the three miniatures that were finished last time. And today I will be starting on the ladies. And they bear some resemblance to ladies from a classic movie called Hocus Pocus. And I was actually asked to paint them using that movie for reference. The movie is from 1993, and I haven't watched it. And this is about witches who come back from the dead, apparently, to Salem and do all sorts of nasty things there. So I will be using the characters from that movie as inspiration here. And for that, I have a picture that I downloaded. I will be taking a peek at it every now and then because what I noticed is that who knows, maybe the lovely witches from the movie were a source of inspiration here because there are some similarities like in the physique of the characters or the hairstyle. Like this one is a redhead in the movie. So of course their features in the movie are somewhat exaggerated, and the features of these one are, well, I wouldn't even call them exaggerated. I would say distorted. So the goal is to have them paint three of them simultaneously, and I think I will be using similar color scheme to the one used on the radar here. So I will start with my favorite base color for the skin, which is Gallimon Flesh. Give it a good shake, and it's ready to go. Not much really needed because it's a color. Such a nice color that can be applied directly. But you know what? Actually, before I put the Gallimon contrast, I will just give it a very general overbrush just to pick up some of the details and make sure that I have clarity on where the details should land, where the highlights should be focused. This is not a necessary step, but I figured it just helps me plan the process better, just as long as I can kind of put a spotlight on those most visible elements. Then also when I apply contrast paint, it nicely settles over. Hey, Mugbluff, hello there. Good to see you again here. Hope your weekend has started well. It's been pretty good here. It's been a good start to the week. Although the weather has been, well, there is one word to describe it, and I shouldn't probably say it out loud. Let's just say it hasn't been the most enjoyable. It's been raining, pretty cold, a bit of snow, mostly raining, so not fun. So this kind of overbrush just helps me get an overview of details, and as you can see, the details on this lady are just wonderful. I can honestly say they look absolutely amazing. And yeah, good to know you're okay. That the weekend started well for you, my bluff. I also I did some assembly. I did some conversion work on my Kurgan model and Zoraida model. I will make sure to share the final results with you guys when I'm done. I also played some games last week. Not much success there, but well, I played one game actually. Pretty good. It was Zoraida. No, it was Titania versus Hoffman, the first Hoffman and the first Titania. I lost that game, but it was actually close to a draw. Some key decisions were not made at the right time, some bad luck, but overall, the Hoffman player won deservedly. It was a friendly game. This week I also plan to get some games in. Yeah, things are pretty stable. And the kids are going to knocking on wood. They have been going to the kindergarten for the past couple of days, so that makes life easier because they love it. And while they are okay staying at home, they get bored and they miss the kindergarten and their friends. So good that they are back and things are somewhat normal. Now, for these guys, I will be starting with my standard approach because Gallimon Flesh is a color of, I would say, possibilities. Because you can just apply it and go the traditional Caucasian skin tone. You can turn it much darker, make it look Mediterranean or Asian, however you feel about your miniatures. It's a very, I would say, it's a highly versatile color that you can tweak any way you feel suitable. And I will tweak this one to make it look like ancient witch skin. So kind of like zombie skin, maybe. Well, definitely unhealthy skin. But for now, it just allows me to define the details, give a clear outline of where the shadows land. Only one human arm on this lady. She's holding a voodoo doll, I believe. She's holding onto a branch, and the voodoo doll is hanging from it. So there are some there are some elements that make you think of Bayou and Neverborn immediately. Just making sure I remove the excess from the places where too much of the paint gathered. That's the first one base coated. Already looking pretty good. Oh, the video is lagging a bit. Well, I'm sorry about that. Not much I can do now. I'll just try to keep it less dynamic and hold it more firmly in one place. Because typically I would, for the stream, I would even switch to different internet provider, but not able to do that since my laptop broke down a little bit and I needed a replacement. So reset. I had to set up everything from scratch. Well, I hope it smooths out over time and becomes less choppy. Could be your internet as well, but I have a peek at the Twitch in my other monitor and seems to be slightly laggy there, but yeah, that's I don't think I can do anything about it now. As long as the detail is visible and the sound carries, those are the most important bits, I believe. No, no problem. The laptop it's a work laptop, so I got a replacement right out of the bat. The thing was that I don't use a mouse, and the touchpad area just seemed like there was a wear and tear damage on it, and it was malfunctioning. And I cannot work without my touchpad active. I'm just forgot how to use a mouse. Haven't used it in years. I think the main reason is that I often work while I commute. So, for example, while sitting on a train, and I often work from home, which means carrying my laptop around the place. So I need to have it working. Good to know that the sound is good. So whatever is lacking in the video, I will make up with the sound, I hope. So that's the third lady. I think I'll just start with getting a really nice old look on the skin, almost a zombie-like, but you can see it just the details fill up so nicely, and kind of happy, kind of mean expression is showing through. As for the colors of their dresses, I will be using pictures from the Hocus Pocus movie as reference, because there are three witches there that have clearly defined colors. One is reddish orange, the other one is black green, and the other one is like royal red with hints of gold. So this one will be this green and black mixture, and the other two will be mixture of red, gold, and some orange. Now for the next part, I will just add some of the appropriately called decomposed flesh, which is this kind of khaki color, but also brighter than khaki. And I will mix it in with Gallium flesh that I had. And I will start highlighting. So grabbing a slightly finer brush. And I'm ready to start the highlight process. I will start with the one that I base coated first, since the contrast paint has kind of settled in the best here. It seems like it's good to go. Just add a drop of water to the mix, and at this point I'm fine with not perfect highlights because they will be smoothed over with some glazes. But what I'm aiming for here is the highlight color that is not that much different from the base color, but different enough to create visible transition from the deepest recesses, from the shaded areas to the elements that are sticking out more, like those here, well-defined stomach muscles. This is the forearm. Then with the fingers, I will give them a general highlight and pick them out individually. So it's a bit time consuming, but I'm fine because with diluted consistency of paint, I have more control. And also, if I choose a color which is fairly similar to the base coat, I avoid the risk of going over some elements because the transitions will be smooth, and I won't really, if I even if I go over some details, it's all fixable at this point. So this lady goes first, and as for the eyes, I'm thinking glowy red. So my signature approach to eyes, those are never born creatures after all, even if there are alternatives. I will still treat them as never born, so that I don't want them to have human-like eyes. And my favorite from the three, the big one with pumpkin. So just rotating, applying highlights roughly all over the surface because the paint is thinned down. So even if I apply it over the whole surface, I will still use the same color to go over the elements which are protruding, like the nose, the cheeks, the cheekbones, or just avoiding eye sockets and the elements, the shaded areas. And this gives me just more of a control. Now the third lady. And looks like some hair is on her face. Could be some part of a branch. That's why I think that next thing I do once I've painted their skin and eyes and face details, I will go over the three elements just to make sure I get somewhat coherent look for all three, because they are all three, they come from the same set, so I want to treat them somewhat differently, because after all they represent the same type of minion. So while each of them will be individualized with different colors of clothes, I'll keep some of the elements similar. And in game, these are Wallgeists, so those are double keyword minions. They can be either Fey, so used with Titania, or they can be Swamp Fiends, and so used with Zoraida. And the keyword thing is that they smell bad. They have penetrating stench, which is not a really nice feature, but it results in your opponent needing to discard a card if they activate in their engagement range, because if they don't, they get stunned. And stunned can be severely limiting on some models, especially on masters, because you cannot declare triggers. So it makes any model, most of the models really, much less effective in game. So that's one thing. Another thing is that they can be more mobile, because they can discard the card or just push for 3 inches if they are not in, well, just push for free if they are in severe terrain. So there's that placing element of tabletop maneuvering. And also the good thing about them is that for some strategies they have planted roots, so you cannot move them. They cannot be moved by enemy effects. So if you want to make sure that the model stays locked in at one place, then you can use them. They are fairly survivable because although they've got low defense of 5, they have armor. They also go well with Titania because they place another marker. Stink, stank, stank. That's true. Stinky ladies. And I'm just looking at the app to look at the pictures of them, and I'm going to go with slightly different colors, but it's good to know that at least, for example, this one has an apple growing out of the branch that's growing out of her head and another in her hair. Well, as far as offense, their attack value is rather low because it's only 5, so that means that you can't really guarantee anything. But if they target a model that is in the same type of terrain, then they don't need to see it as long as it's the same piece of terrain. So if it's like if she's standing on the edge of the forest and the opponent is standing on the other edge on the other side of the forest, they can already attack the enemy. So that's a neat trick. They can handle slow in triggers. They can move the target around a little bit. They can create those markers for Titania. So quite mobile, fairly resilient, not very expensive. I believe 6 soul stones as far as I remember. Now I'm getting much brighter with the highlights. So applying the next highlight, which is this decomposing decomposed flesh mixed with very light gray, just going into the gray spectrum of flesh tone already at this stage. And at this point, I want to make sure I clearly mark out that this is a highlight. So this covers smaller surface than the previous layer of paint. Because if I go over the whole surface again, it just ruins the effort. So I want to be more careful about placing highlights here. Again, the paint is thinned down considerably to allow me more control. Because if I go over the same element with the same dilution of paint, it just allows me to build up the highlight. Hey, Doug. Thanks for dropping by. Good to see you. Have you recovered from Las Vegas Open already, or are you still mentally there? Because I saw the videos of you handing out announcing the winners and handling all the prizes. You looked very, very energized. And then you had the long drive home, so I'm sure that must have taken a toll. So hope you've recovered and got back on your feet. Because when you are surrounded with cool people, it will just get the energy seamlessly. But then when you're on your own, the energy level starts dropping, the adrenaline level decreases, well, and the wariness comes through. At least that's how I work, I think. Closer to normal. Good to know. Good to know. Looked like a fun event, and thank you for your hint, because last time I checked in on your stream, you suggested tagging the guy who played Neverborn and won, and actually got his reply. So I don't know what was the pool in the final game where he used Zoraida, Neverborn Zoraida, but he had an absolutely ridiculous list with 3 frogs, so 3 of those. Come on, why can I say it? 3. How are these guys called? Oh, can't really remember it. No, I must remember it. The Silurids, of course, the Silurids. He had 3 Silurids. He had the First Mate, he had Widow Weaver, and the Bandersnatch. And that's it. And he had Zoraida. So all models were extremely mobile. So I would assume that it was something like Break the Line or other strategy that really requires high mobility. So in terms of mobility, his crew was superbly quick. Not that much of a beatdown crew, although the First Mate can, when focused, can land a big hit. Widow Weaver can also get some summons, so at least I haven't tried. It's a bold list for sure, because there isn't really much power in it, so there is a lot of scheming potential, not that much potential to take down enemy scheme runners. Well, but it worked for him. So I've tried, the best I've tried, the closest I've tried was break the line list with 2 Silurids and 1 First Mate. And that was already, that felt like I'm flying all over the board. But then I also used Will-O-Wisp just for debuffing the opponent who was affected by the voodoo doll. So I think that the 2 highlights are already settled in nicely. So now I will go to pure Grimy Gray. So again, aptly named paint from currently my go-to range of paints, AK-47 Interactive. Just love them. And I will grab a smaller brush make sure that the paint is diluted, and repeat all the fine details on those lovely ladies. Yeah, that's the direction I wanted. And now, just to add some more color, I will give it an purplish glaze afterwards. So just picking up the final highlight, I think, maybe one more. Although I could get one more highlight, very gentle highlight, after I've given it a glaze, just to avoid overdoing it now. Now I'll pick out the fingers. And this one is almost ready for a glaze. Now the second one. Here I will be paying a bit closer attention and maybe use less diluted paint just to pick up the knuckles on the fingers. And I will pick them one by one, and the tips of the fingers. Don't really paint nails on miniatures because I just don't really see the point on this scale. Don't think that if I added much brighter paint they would be noticeable at all. Besides, the way that Malifaux miniatures are designed, they often hold something, be it a weapon or an item, so it doesn't seem like it's worth the effort. And the big one, the one with tree trunk arm. Also moving closer to the midsection of each part of the arm that is visible, because she has some ornaments on her on her arm. Looks like some braids and it looks like some nice elegant jewelry, like like pearls, but I will probably paint them green just to go with the bayou nature vibe, making sure that the cheekbones are distinctly brighter than the rest of the face. So right now the contrasts are becoming between the recesses and the highlighted areas are becoming much more clearly visible, which is what I want, as they will get evened out by a glaze which I'm about to apply, which will be a mix of Carbourg Crimson and Reikland Flesh Shade, which is I will add more of Carbourg Crimson to make it more purplish than brownish, because that way I want to make it look more unhealthy. So rather than saturated shades that I would normally use on human skin, I'm going for more, I would say, more zombie-like effect here. So let me just dilute it with water slightly, check if I like the color. Seems fine. It's this brownish shade of purple, and I will just glaze it over the skin on all three of them. Let's see if I bring down the camera a bit, maybe it will help. Yeah, seems like the focus is right. just gives the whole skin some nice saturation, which I will kind of take back by applying one more targeted highlight. There it is. Almost finished with glazing this one. Just making sure that more stays in the recessed areas versus pulling on the top. Now this hand will be a good example of how I control it, because I want it closer to this sleeve, a bit more between the fingers. Now in the inner part of the hand here, just letting it pull a little more over there. And this just allows me to always appreciate the quality of the sculpt. And I'm not always that happy about faces, because sometimes they look like they're devoid of any emotion. But these are just exuding all kinds of emotion. Like this kind of joy, but mean type of joy that is caused by doing something mischievous. So just glazing over the whole surface. And now, before it even dries completely, I will already repick some of the fine details, just to make sure I stay consistent within the color spectrum I'm applying here. So again, smaller brush, and a bit more of that gray, maybe a bit of ivory white, and just going over the details again. Just the final details. Maybe I will start with the one that I glazed over first, and the paint is really thin down, just to make sure it smoothly goes over the most clearly defined elements without creating too much of a contrast. All right, now the neck and the lips. I think I might give them a hint of yellow, so a very light glaze of yellow, or maybe green. I think green will be quite good on them, because I want to give this indication that it's not only this old zombie-like skin of ancient witches, but that they're also firmly connected with the element of nature. And I would say that having some more of a brush control just takes practice. I seem to be going over them very quickly, but that's the result of really quite a few years of painting and doing it on all kinds of models. Because I didn't start my hobby adventure with Malifaux. I started much earlier. I actually started with a game called Warzone back in what, late 90s. Those were some fun miniatures. Then I switched to Lord of the Rings around the time when movies were popular, and those were some fantastic miniatures. Really, really excellent quality of design there. Then I moved to War Machine for a while, and then at some point while browsing, I think Cool Me or Not, I just randomly came across pictures of avatars, and I saw Avatar of Seamus and Avatar of Lady Justice, and I thought, well, I don't care what that system is, I just wanted to paint it. So I found a store that had them, ordered, I think I ordered, no, the first box I ordered was Lady Justice, the old version, the first version. Shortly after that, I bought more and kept and have been painting Malifaux since then, never looking back. Although I do paint some other systems every now and then, but 95% of the time it's just Malifaux. This is feels like this is my comfort zone when it comes to miniature painting. So now I'll give it a light glaze of green just to kind of bring them down a bit because I thought it looked too starkly purple, that the purple vibe was too strong on them. So I'll just tone it down with a glaze of green, which will also work well with the tree and pumpkin elements that I have there. And also while talking about Malifaux, I just want to give a shout out to a YouTube channel called The Hidden Bridge, because these guys have been releasing some nice vassal battle reports, but they are about to release, I mean they have already released a video of battle report on standard table with miniatures between Yenza and Zoraida. It's currently available in German only, so for those of you German speakers and just you can already check it out. There will be a English version later in the week, and if you don't want to miss it, then the easiest way is to go to YouTube, find the Hidden Bridge channel, subscribe to it, and be pinged with notifications. That way you will ensure that you know when the video is available, and these guys produce some really, really top-notch quality stuff. So you don't want to miss out on that. And it's not that long. It's about 40 minutes for edited, narrated battle report with excellent miniatures, good-looking terrain. So good for lunch, extended lunch break, let's say. So now my standard approach to painting the eyes, which is going red first, then going yellow, then yellow mixed with white, then some pure white, and a glaze of red, just to make them look like they are burning. I will also fill in the details for the lips and mouth in a second. And that's the advantage of painting acrylics with acrylics, because I accidentally put some red on the cheek, so I can quickly get some water in and remove it. Yeah, mistakes will happen. They are just part of the process. Just to track this eye socket, there it is. And now onto the yellow. and big tournaments, this is referring to Goose Ladders. Of course, happy little accidents. Big tournaments, they can wear you down really. Because when you get into a game and when you start getting locked in to what's happening, it's just draining experience. I mean, it's pure fun, it's pleasure, especially when you face people who have a mindset that they came to play, win, and have fun, all those things, not just win. Then it's extremely pleasant experience, but at the same time, you stay fully focused. There are so many factors in the game. I mean, keeping track of the score, of the soul stones, of the wounds, activations. So there are different. If you look at it at tracking resources that are available to you during a game, there's plenty. So they can really get to you. That's why I like traveling. If I travel to tournaments, I like taking a train because I can sleep it off. And also during tournament, I typically have a can of some unhealthy energetic drink just to keep me awake because like after a couple of hours the attention span isn't really that good again and I feel like I need a boost. So this lady is already looking pretty good. The main challenge with these will be painting those big areas where their clothes are, because it's not enough to just glaze over them with contrast paint. It takes a while to then build highlights using smooth transitions, and I'm not going to be rushing through that because I don't know if I will finish them or get close to finish during today's stream. I don't want to hurry. I'm happy to continue next week should I not get that far. But anyway, I already have a solid plan for the next stream because for the next stream, now I will just fill in the recesses. So the recesses where their mouths are. Because for the next stream, I want to paint the new Marcus. Not the actual miniature, because I don't have it. It hasn't been released yet. But I will be painting a conversion. A conversion that hopefully I will complete over this weekend, maybe. And that conversion will be using the body of M3 Marcus. So the guy that looks actually younger than the older version of miniature, and head from Boltungin. So the hyena-like creature, and maybe combining some of arms of Boltungin with Marcus's arms. It will be challenging because the M3 version is highly dynamic. This is the version that stands on a tall rock in a dynamic position. Benjamin Button Marcus. Yeah, that's a good name. He got he found the fountain of youth while running away from Lord Cooper, maybe. Yeah, and the new Marcus Barcus looks great. Looks great, but I just want to make a conversion before the new one is released. And I thought that those Bultungin hats, they can look pretty good on human. They will require some work with green stuff for sure, but I'm happy to do that work as long as it makes it playable. Because while the model is not released, I think that I like the approach that I don't know how it works in the States, in Poland. During tournaments, the TOs just say, what the hell, just play whatever master you want, whatever version you want. If you want to play Marcus the Barcus, just put your Marcus on 40mm base and go with that. Because, I mean, people want to experience, and that's understandable. People want to experience the new releases and put them on the gaming table. And I don't really see a point of postponing that until the model is available, because that's unpredictable. I mean, the distribution is. I mean, I know that Word is doing their best. They have always been doing their best, but it's really not up to Word how fast the ship sails, or how many unpredictable delays there are, or what Waldo does when things get to Word headquarters. So I think it's only fair to just allow people to experience the game. And you've been using your old Blast of December as Barcus. Yeah, why not? It's on 40mm. It looks feral enough, and it allows you to already gain some valuable experience. I haven't used any new master. I just played. I played against new Kirai. I played against new von Stuck. Both seem pretty strong. But then I was playing against a very good seasoned player. So that was to be challenging by default. Okay, so I'm thinking maybe I will try to get this eye socket as well, or maybe not, because there isn't really a pupil in that. I will just make sure I use some more dark wash to make it look hollow, like it's growing into a tree. Yeah, similarly here, just keep it a bit darker. I think now I'll go with the 3 parts. And for happy little 3 parts, I will be using Gore Grantafur. But the new Marcus is scheduled to be released. I don't exactly remember which month, but as far as I remember, it's first quarter anyway. So either this month or next, or the one after. So, well, anyhow, it's not that long of a wait. Because Gore Grantafur it works great for leathery elements, but it's also this kind of rich, saturated shade of brown, which is good for trees, branches. It just immediately impacts the surface and gives this very nice color definition. Sure, go get your errands, Doug, and thanks for dropping by. Good seeing you, and have fun playing your Blessed of December Barcus. It was nice actually getting some peeks of things happening at the Las Vegas Open scene with pictures of tables, players, just showing that, yeah, somewhere out there, real people are playing the real game. And again, I'm stressing the fact that I have nothing personally against Vassal. It's not that I don't like it. I just never tried it because I just like my painted miniatures. I'm a sucker for my own work, I guess, or just, this kind of more direct human interaction, which to my mind is just an essential component of the game. I enjoy watching Vassal games, having it play in the background when I paint, but I have never even considered playing it. Now, the big one, she has a branch that is sticking out of her left forearm. And as you can see, this hue change is quite noticeable here already because it's somewhat purplish in the recesses. The raised areas are much brighter with a hint of green, so it looks like this kind of pale, sick skin. And I think that there is also a part of a branch that's her face is mutating into. So I just want to make sure it's picked up. Yes, it is picked out now. It looks very organic. Nice. And now the big tree. I saved it for last because this will take a while. I don't want to hurry, but this is a major chunk of surface to cover because this is literally, it looks like either a witch that's jumping out of a tree or a tree that is giving, in a way, birth to a witch. But it's half tree, half witch, and the tree section is quite big. So I just want to make sure I give it a good coverage of Gorgranta fur, which is one of my favorite contrast colors, because not all of them are great. And there are also some other ranges that are supposed to be fairly good and are much, much cheaper, like the Army Painter. I haven't checked them out yet. There are also some other that I can't recall at this point. This is a nice approach to painting when you go from bright to dark versus the other way around. I find that the colors tend to be brighter overall. So getting an even coverage here, spreading the excess of paint around. Kind of framing the model into that tree trunk section. There are some bandages or some pieces of cloth on her shin here. And this is just a part of painting where you feels like you want to get it done quickly and move on to other parts, but this is where I think you just should slow down, maintain this fairly relaxed pace. There is no need to hurry, absolutely no need to speed things up. I just find that I tend to enjoy it less when I start speeding up, and I don't really care much for speed painting. I want to just gradually build this up, and the way I approach it for this one is just making sure I cover the whole surface on one element, then do the same on the other. And we're 1 hour into the stream. So 1/3 of the time, the skin is already done. Some bark tree elements are already covered. I think the next I will do the pumpkins and define the gray areas where the sand is. And just sculpted a very simple rock because those are hollow bases. They will be filled with UV resin, which is green, and if I glued them to the bottom of the hollow base, then they would be, well, barely visible. The detail would get lost, so don't want to go that path. And I have painted a fair share of pre-assembled word models. I'm not sure if those are my favorite, because I would say that maybe Luther, so the alternative Blessed of December, is my favorite. But that being said, those are, in terms of quality, I think the best. Although I didn't get much overview of the other side models. I actually have some of those like mutated shark models that Word sent me a while ago, and I will be painting them on one of the streams at some point in the future. And they look fine. They look really good. I got a glimpse of some of the Cult of the Burning Man miniatures. And in fact, when the Kickstarter, I believe, yeah, the Kickstarter was launched, I was really pondering it, considering whether I should buy into the system or not. But I knew from the get-go that if I was to buy into the system, I would start with Cult of the Burning Man, because those, on a static level, those miniatures appeal to me the most. I just like this idea of crazy cult with mutations and some really, really nice models there. But in the end, I didn't buy into the game, and the reason was just that I was reasonable. I just thought, well, I'd love to, but I just struggle to find time to play Malifaux regularly, and just there is no chance that with work, family commitments, I'll be able to find time for another system. But there are things happening. In the other side, there is this new faction. In one of the recent Waldos Weekly, there have been a nice preview of new commander, I believe, are the names of what is the equivalent of a master, like this beefy barbarian lady riding a dinosaur. I mean, how cool can a commander be? Not much cooler than that. So yeah, I will be painting some the other side stuff for sure. I don't think that anyone on the Word streams has painted any of the other side yet. So that should probably happen. Okay, so the tree structure is getting solid. You just want to make sure that you avoid leaving any areas purely white, because they will just look bad. Okay, there's the top of the branch that she's holding onto with this nice little voodoo doll hanging from it. I really like this approach where I just have this basic highlights. Those are actually two voodoo dolls. That's sweet. Maybe brother and sister. I like this approach where I get to kind of define the colors first and then dive into highlights, shades, whatever I find more suitable. But I think it's actually worked pretty well that I added a hint of green to the skin tone. Okay, Sivas did Samantha Thrace and Elino did a Stalking Portal. Yeah, now that you wrote it, I remember. Yeah, so there have been some the other side presence on the word stream already. And I'm sure there will be more. So why not the pumpkins now? Just to start with those bright, nice areas. So yeah, the other side has been there. I stand corrected. What I really liked, the favorite unit, I mean the in terms of design, was this some kind somewhat special corps for special operations from this human faction, and they had this, I think, a lady with a flamethrower, an elderly lady with a flamethrower, which just looked so ridiculous and so fun. So here I will do the hair, both the hair and the pumpkin, although in the course of next couple of highlights, colors on the pumpkin and on the hair will be significantly different. Just want to put the base color. Such a cool looking model. I was probably the least impressed with this one, but feels like she's growing on me. I'm having a lot of fun painting this model. And the facial details are so nice here. I mean, I know I am getting excited about painting a tiny miniature, but what can I do? It's a hobby of mine, and I become very happy when I get to work on something that I find enjoyable and when the quality of the model is high. It's just double the joy. So there is another pumpkin and two more pumpkins on this big lady. She will have plenty of red, I think. So I'm thinking red cape, red skirt, and orangish midsection. That's the plan for her. Or maybe just orange sleeves and the stockings black. Hard to say at this point. Well, I got the face painted, and that already gives me an idea of how to plan the other elements. So I think that next I will just do the hair. Give a base coat for hair on the other two. This one will have her hair kind of dark black with a hint of purple. That's my thinking here. And I'm saying that because that's how one of the characters from Hocus Pocus movie looks like. The one that this one somehow somewhat resembles, just there's a hint of resemblance. Might be accidental, might not. You never know. Where it has been quite creative when it comes to references to other movies. One of my favorite is the alternative bishop, the beefy guy. That's a reference to the Lobo comic. So I guess someone at Word is a fan of this comic book. It's about this brutal, it's extremely brutal and gory. It's this space mercenary who is essentially invincible and just thrives on violence. So, sounds like Bishop, right? Malifaux, description of Malifaux Bishop as well. Okie dokie, so those are the pumpkins. And you can already tell that even just this base coat of contrast paint gives it a fairly decent look. So now I will do the slightly purple hair, black purple, black with a hint of purple. And for that I will prepare Magus purple. I will mix it with black Templar. And by my palette I mean this old CD. Useful, flat, that paint doesn't spill over. Besides, I don't use that much of paint to make it a challenge. So this one I think will require some follow-up because this is more gray than black at this point. So maybe I'll just add more of black to that. But the detail gets defined immediately because the paint just flows into the recessed areas immediately. Giving this a nice definition. Oh, and I had some really heavy metal experience over the weekend because I went with my girls, they are 4 and 6.5, to a theater, to a play called Elsa's Birthday. Yeah, very heavy metal. So essentially it was a kind of musical. It was actually the performance of songs was quite good, and come on, everyone knows this Let It Go song. So the girls loved it. The costumes were spot on. The scenography was good and it was highly interactive. And actually I had fun mainly because my kids had fun, but it was pretty good. It was the highlight of the weekend because the weather was so awful that we just couldn't even leave home. It was windy, rainy, and just bad. So the third lady has really bright hair. Looking at the picture that I have for reference. So I'll just go with Nastric yellow already. Very bright shade of yellow that I will then kind of tone down, highlight to something different. So in a nutshell, I should be able to complete or almost complete the whole set, the whole box of alternative Zoraida over the course of 3 streams. So I'm glad I was able to make it a kind of series where I followed up each week with different models. Just helps me. I know those are highly the way that these miniatures are designed makes it look like each of them is highly individualized, although each of the witches is technically the same type of minion in game. But I still wanted to keep them over the course of streams happening shortly one after another, just to make sure I keep the colors coherent and have a overall vision of where I want to go. This is not her. This is a crow. So this crow will be getting some black treatment. I already have some black on the palette, so why don't I go with it? Yeah, it's the pigment here is strong enough to offset the yellow that I've applied. Okay, there's the birdie. Some of it is visible behind the shoulder. All right. Now I'm thinking I will. So many options, so much potential. Why don't I do the green parts of the pumpkins actually? But in order to do that effectively, I will just pick out the details in white again so that the paint can impact them in a more defining manner. Just picking up the green details with white because they will be hit with green contrast in a second. And if I applied green here on the white mixed with orange, it would be kind of lost. And I want it to be distinctly different. And I'm thinking the pumpkins might get their eyes glowy, although the glow won't be that significant on an orange miniature, but it will be there. So again, the green part, the base coat for the green part, for the other pumpkin. So there's already a lot going on here. And I'm ready to apply the green, which will be Warp Lightning. Another pretty good contrast paint, which has a quite strong pigment. So I'll just put it on the leaves, just to make sure that they are already visible at this stage. And here I may even give it a hint of yellow, just to make sure that the green is vivid, although I kind of like how it contrasts with this pale orange shade, because it's a very warm shade of green that I'm giving here. For this one, I actually skipped repicking the leaves with white, but that's fine. It will just be more organic. It's fine on one to be less lively, especially given the fact that this lady will be getting some green on her dress anyways. So already some details are locked in. Now, what to do next? Just going now with the easy choices, because then the challenging the choices which will cause me to pause and think a bit longer would be the color choices for clothes. But for now, the easy choices. So another easy choice is the rock that they're standing on. It will be Basilicanum Gray. It's a very simple rock formation that I sculpted with milliput. I think sculpted is even too much of a statement here because I just mixed two parts modeling putty, applied it to the base, pressed some other bases with texture onto that, formed some rock shape that was large enough for the miniature to fit in, and it just literally took a few minutes to put it there. But this kind of elevation is needed here because those are hollow bases. So once I put resin into the hollow space, the miniature will still be fully visible, and if I glued it to the bottom, it would kind of a lot of detail would be lost and covered with resin. And I don't want that to happen. There, so Basilicanum Gray firmly locked in for the whole section of the stone, which means I can do another one. And this lady is standing on a slightly taller rock, happily throwing a pumpkin at someone. Well, the wild guys don't have ranged attack. Although they're attack that can let them hit an opponent that's sitting in the same type of terrain, that can have a pretty surprisingly long range without any negative modifiers for the concealment, so that's an option. Although the attack value is 5, so it's not that reliable. Actually, here's the largest rock formations that I've made. Just making sure I get it closer to the camera. Painting on streams here, it's always a bit of a different experience for me because typically when I paint, there's either a vassal battle YouTube video that I'm watching in the background, so some noise to fill in the silence, or some music or some podcast. It's hardly ever silence. I think this puts me in the more focused frame of mind. Let me just get up and open the window slightly as it's getting a bit stuffy again. There, it's better. Now, what to paint next? And as always, I don't have a specific plan going into, so maybe the hat. So this lady will have red blouse. So maybe I'll do the red first. Why don't I do that? We are halfway through the stream, so about time I started tackling the clothes. Because that will give me a really good idea of where to go next. So Blood Angels Red is this extremely vibrant shade of red. Actually, I will need to grab a smaller brush for that, slightly smaller, just to give me more control. And the good thing about this color is that you can get a really, really decent result. I would say even a modern tabletop ready by just applying it over white base coat. See, it's just enough to get this strong, vibrant red with hints of lights and shadows. And that's already a really, really fine looking color. Of course, I will tweak it slightly with some highlights and some shades, but just one coat of it already looks good. It's probably the best contrast paint. I mean, in terms of getting what you want, right? If you want solid color with hint of highlights after one go, you get it with this one. And here I need to turn it slightly upside down to cover the surface below. Maybe keep it a bit darker for this element that I didn't cover well at the first go. All right, now it's covered. And now going to the back. Yeah, I will need to paint the big hat next. And that hat, of course, the miniature is pre-assembled. If it wasn't, I would probably attach the hat after painting the back because it's just challenging to access it with brush now. Yeah, but it's already looking strong. Maybe I'll try to sneak in a bit more paint there. Yeah, that's the red blouse on this lovely lady. Now the other lovely lady. Thinking what should be red and what could be black here. I think the dress and the cape could be red with different hints of red. Maybe some orange here. I want to make her look similar to the character from the movie. So orange, and maybe the sleeves would be yellow so that she looks a bit like a pumpkin lady. That could work. That could work. So I'll start with yellow sleeves. I can always get back to it. and tweak the colors if I don't find the end result satisfactory. Okay, let me just twist it upside down. This is one of my least favorite aspects of painting pre-assembled miniatures because, well, you just need to go with the flow and try to get the paint where it's not initially easy. Yeah, this will be this dark muted shade of yellow, almost brown actually, which should work well with orange. And as I said before, the orange on the clothes will be fine-tuned to look different than the orange on the pumpkin. Yeah, so there's the yellow sleeve part. The yellow can go out for a while. And now let's get back to orange. I spent a lot of time tweaking my work setup and my working station to have everything easily accessible to the point where I feel quite happy with the current setup. Just putting the camera up for a second for you guys to see. This is the setup that I have in front of me, and it kind of goes all the way to the left. And the brushes are some other miniatures that I'm all either kind of working on, that are works in progress, or that I have just finished and that I just need to take good pictures of. But it's challenging to take good pictures when the weather is lousy and when it gets dark early, because oftentimes during the day I simply do not have time to set things up and pull the backdrop that I have printed, just struggling with finding right time. But I will take good pictures of Zoraida and Bedeviled Cattle and Prince Toden, the blue frog. I think I'll take them. Tomorrow I won't, because I will be at the office, so likely on Thursday. Now the cape will be red, so these elements will be slightly different shade. Well, this is the part where it's really awkward to get any solid paint in, because I can barely squeeze my brush in between the cape and the back. So what I essentially want to do is to make sure that there is no white visible. It's not like I don't expect anyone to be peering over from this angle especially when gaming. Just the perfectionist in me doesn't like cutting corners, even if the corners are not visible. And now the cape will be red, as I said, so let's go with red and see where it leads us. So the back part, which is a struggle. So just using a brush which is somewhat flat and holds enough paint to let me even tackle that area. And actually, this color here, I think it's not part of the cape after all, or could be part of the cape. I will make up my mind shortly. It's just maybe a bit challenging, but it's a kind of adventure to paint a miniature for which you do not have any specific reference point, because I don't think I've seen it painted anywhere besides the official artwork just shows part of the miniature in the app, so I can't really say holistically how it could be tackled, which is fine because I feel more at ease just going with the flow and using different colors which I find suitable. Yeah, this part will be red. I've made up my mind. I just want to have this kind of frame around the head in the darker shades, and red, this rich shade of red will work very well. And one thing that you might have already observed when I work on small areas, I tend to move the tip of the brush before I even touch the surface, just to get into kind of rhythm. And I just personally feel it gives me a bit of a sense of control over the process, the application of paint to a small area. It works for me. Doesn't mean that it can work for everyone, but if you're struggling with painting small surfaces, I suggest giving it a go. Just kind of training your wrist. So I would say more about training your brain than your wrist, but maybe a bit of both. And I really, really like this miniature. This is such a great model. So for the skirt, since this miniature is to be based on the movie character, I will first give some more hints of purple to the hair, and for that I will use Green Stuff Works Sakura Purple ink. I'll try applying it just directly over black, because it should tint it purple. It's more of dark gray currently rather than black. And I want to have a clear indication that it's not pure purple, that it's not pure black, that it has a hint of purple in it. And I may just use some more black to get to the recessed areas. There are some threads or pieces of material that hold her together, so I will paint them white again shortly. Just make sure I fill in the recess for hollow eye socket with black so that it looks completely hollow. And we're past the midpoint of the stream, and I'm quite happy with the progress made so far. Quite significant. Now I think red is the way going forward here. So just take out the excess from the recesses here. Very autumn themed model now with the current choices that I've made for color scheme. She's holding the hem of her dress. I mean, the level of detail is just incredible. Yeah, the dynamic pose, the way that material falls, everything looks so nice here. Just would you look at this lovely happy lady? Would you look at her? And again, this is the part of the miniature that no one will really examine, but I just hate leaving white spots where they could be visible. And the stockings, I believe, green, maybe green, or now I'm hesitating. Maybe pink. Pink would look a bit ridiculous here in this color setup, but you never know. So looking at the color screen, I think the opposite color would be green or bright yellow. Well, I'll just get back to it in a second. For now, I can get back to this one, which has this big hat. And I'm thinking purple here. Purple might be the good choice. Yes, why not? So let's go with Magus purple mixed with Sacra purple from Green Stuff Word and maybe a dot of dark brown just to keep it more coherent with the other colors that I've applied here already. just make us purple, and I will get a drop of Gorgranta Flesh just to keep it slightly darker. Yeah, I'm quite happy with the color. It flows nicely, but I will get it another pass for sure, another layer or two. The reason I made it so bright that it's difficult to really access it around the tree area or from the bottom. So I just want to make sure that if I use bright color, if I happen to somehow tint other areas or get paint onto other areas, other elements, they won't be significantly impacted. So just, you can say I'm just playing it safe. Okay. Now, since I have this purple already, why don't I actually do the ties here in purple? The thighs, why not the thighs in purple? And the shoes will be black, because why not? It may look like I'm almost done with this miniature, but I assure you guys there's plenty of work left, because each color that you see will be highlighted. On each color I will push the shades further, so there are still a couple of hours left. I will need to think whether I want to continue next stream with them, because maybe that will just be a slower part where I just go back and forth between darker and brighter shades on the same area, which might not make for the most interesting stream experience, especially that I have some other exciting options. Now the third one, I'll start on the third one and her gloves in a second. So we can get back to this over there. This is the moment where I could probably benefit from using hairdryer, but I'll just apply another layer and let it dry slowly. And at this point, the second layer, the first one was just to build up to set up for success with the next layer. And purple contrasts and generally purple inks have this slightly weaker pigmentation. That means that they may need a couple of successively built layers, one after another. This looks even like a hollow face here. This will look fun when it dries. All right, another pass here. Yeah, the purple looks quite okay. I I may add a few drops of slimy mud water. And here I also tainted kind of the area with red, so I'm just going over it with purple to make sure that it's not really visible, because why would we want it visible? Just making sure I remove the excess where it's slightly pooled, like here. This is all about control, taking it slow, making small tweaks. But this is already a fine looking. Oh yeah. Spence Wilder, that's very true. Credit card hates cool boxes. That's fair point. Because you start making an argument. Well, why don't I get it? Actually, it's looks good. I may paint it one day. I already have 3 other versions of the Raider, but I don't have this one. And I'm not just a player, I'm a collector. It's so easy to justify making additional purchases. It's actually hard to find a reason not to buy them. So why don't you treat yourself with a nice box of miniatures? Don't you deserve it? Well, we all deserve it. There's some nice necklace that I will get to full black later on and then pick it up with, I think, gold. Gold should look good in this warm color scheme. And the whole tree that she's standing on, actually, I'm covering it with white, but I think I will go back with black over it. But I might as well define it with yellow, with white. So the whole tree, it will be dry brushed, then given several different washes and glazes just to make it look fully three-dimensional. Whoa, your mom was born on Halloween then. Then you have a perfectly sound reason to buy this box. I was actually at one point collecting both the Guild, which was my first faction, and the Neverborn, which was my second faction. And at some point, when more and more plastic started getting released, I just gave up because I thought, damn, I just won't be able to keep up with the release schedule. Even, well, gaming wise, not an option. Painting wise, a huge challenge. And I just felt a bit overwhelmed with the pace. So I thought, no, I'll just stick with Neverborn. So I ended up selling my whole guild lot. And from then I've stuck with the Neverborn. Although, even when you stick to one faction, then there are some cross-faction models. Hello, Mugloth. So, some progress for you there. Since you've been out for a while, this is the autumn-themed one. The base colors locked in. This is the tree lady. And this one I haven't really done much progress with because she will be rocking a dark dress, so I'll leave her for the last. Now there is some good yerba to keep me going. Oh, and while I'm picking out the details, why don't I go over those bits in her hair, which look like threads or pieces of material, that kind of ribbon that holds it together. So this is all about brush control and the right amount of paint. So as you can see, I don't apply too much paint so that it doesn't go into the ferrule. This is this metal part that holds the bristle together. And I load it with paint, I would say quite a fair bit of paint. That way it doesn't dry fast. And I have enough time to make sure that I can cover the surface that I want to cover. Hey, thanks, glad you like it. Still plenty of highlights to be worked on, shades to be reinforced, but hey, I'm getting somewhere. I'm working on 3 miniatures simultaneously, so that doesn't help with the speed of painting, and I'm not really forcing it to, not forcing the pace here, just keeping a steady pace of fun enough to be enjoyable without pushing myself too much. Yep. Now maybe slightly even more tweaks to the purple. The purple hat, you see, after the third go, this just becomes much more saturated, rich look of purple. Making sure I do it from all angles, because if I neglect one part, then the whole composition suffers. And I don't want that to happen. And I've mixed in some brown with this purple, just to keep it more coherent with the tree and brown elements around. Now the ribbons in the hair, before I do them, I will actually reinforce the green on the pumpkins. And we are approaching the third hour of the stream, so really thankful for those of you who have stuck for a while, even dropped by for a second to check in on the progress. Those streams are later on, of course, uploaded to Word YouTube profile. They can be found on the Twitch, but it's just great seeing people come by and keep the chat busy. That's always a pleasure to get some interaction with you guys. That's what keeps me going, actually. Another money for animatic. Cool. You are a productive person for sure, because it seems like each time I see you in the chat, whether it's my stream or someone else's, you're full of ideas in various state of progress, but seems like you've been keeping yourself busy, which is a great thing. dokie. A bit more purple here. Now the ribbons. Turquoise could work, because it would work quite well with dark hair and wouldn't be that much of an off color compared to vivid red and orange. So why don't I go with that? I'll use some athematic blue and add a slight touch of athecalion green, which is this dark turquoise shade. So if I pull them together, I should get something that would be a good in-between colors. Yeah, it's good to keep yourself busy with different projects ideas. If I apply too much, I can just always move it around, put the brush on the tissue, remove the color from it, and reapply again. Yeah, it's looking good. Visible enough, not too much contrast with other colors on the model. That's good. All right, now for my next trick, I will actually, there's some red work to be done on the apples. So let me pick up the red. Paint the apple red. Paint another apple red. Some healthy looking apples in the hair, because why not? And this one looks like an apple as well. Just don't see those details right after base coating. You just need some colors in to actually appreciate the level of detail. Okay. Now the third lady, she has like 2 layers of material. But I think she will be dark. I plan for her to be the dark lady with a hint of green. So I will first give her a base coat of black all over. Then she's holding what looks like poisoned apples. So the apples will be painted similarly to what I did with Zoraida. So this kind of vivid green leaking, dripping onto the apple, or into the apple to be more precise. So for now, or actually maybe even before I go there, I'll just use Skeleton Horde. And pick out this skull here, because this is a perfect color for skulls. And the skull will be this kind of light brown. And also there are some bandages on the leg. So I will use the same color, but I will make them much brighter. Well, almost white. Just need to give them a thorough base coat. And now I think I'm ready to move on to browns. There is still the matter of those voodoo dolls, and I will need to think of way of making them brown without making them too much like the tree. That will come later. For now, let's move on to the third lady. And I'll just go straight from the container with Black Templar. Almost spilled it there. Almost spilled it there. I once spilled pink Psycho Brown, so another dark shade of contrast all over my work desk. It was messy. So I'll just avoid those apples because they will be picked out in red and green, I think. And Dark Templar is also really, really good color. I'm not too concerned about this dress blending in with the base at this point, because the base will be giving some green, some maybe brown before I dry brush it, so that there will be considerable difference between the color of the cloth and the base. So this is the point of view. I'm pretty sure that Word has already come up with an idea for a new Nightmare crew for Gen Con, because they need a couple of months ahead to prepare. So I'm sure that the weird people already know. But I wouldn't like to know what the Nightmare crew is going to be. I would much prefer to be surprised or shocked. Now a bit more careful over the color area. So apologies if I'm holding it at an angle that makes it challenging to follow, but I'm just trying to paint it, and sometimes I just need to rotate the miniature to an awkward angle. Yerba mate. Here you go. There's one for you. Cheers. Yeah, wake up call. I mean, yerba is good for wake up. I generally don't have issues with low level of energy when I wake up. Just the level, I just have issues with maintaining the level of energy throughout the day. So yerba is not the first thing I drink. I just typically drink a glass of water, and then around 9, 10 a.m. I start brewing my yerba and then refill it. This one I made early in the morning today. I mean earlier, around what 10 or 10 hours ago, give or take. So now it's just watery yerba mate, but it's still good. Still keeps me awake. So the dark dress is almost ready. Of course, by ready I mean the first layer, the first degree of complexity, because I will be tweaking it. It's not the final effect by far. It will get brighter, then it will get darker again. Right, so just for those of you who joined later, an overview of what happened last week, of what I painted last week. So this is the deviled kettle, the alternative bad juju, which is this crazy creature. And what I mentioned earlier on about the type of complexity I will put on the wood elements, this is more or less what I meant, where it's much less unified look with different shades visible and the hints of different colors. There is the Mama Z. And my favorite miniature from the box, Prince Toden. This is just the best little frog out there. Alright, so now, while I still have black handy, I will paint the high heels on the pumpkin throwing lady. But I'm feeling pretty good. It's still 1 hour to go, but I will get most of the work done, I think. Just preparing those miniatures for painting takes a while, because you can't really scrape off the mold lines the way you would normally do on plastic miniatures. So just using the side of the brush of the hobby knife and kind of scraping against the surface of the line, because it's rubbery, and you just need to cut away at it. So hold your hobby knife at an angle and just cut at it slowly. So not the easiest thing to do. I mean, maybe not easy, but it's just more time consuming. So I would say that while the expectation is that if you have pre-assembled miniature, you're good to paint it from the scratch, but for me, it just takes, personally, maybe it's my thing that just takes me longer. But that might be just my thing. Okay, I like the dark, rich, saturated look of black that I get going here. I may actually stick with black altogether, although I want a hint of green visible. So in order to ensure that, I will go with Verdigris green. I think that's the one. Looks good. Looks like a good match for black. And also, guys, one trick I want to share with you, because you've seen me use my color wheel, which is extremely helpful when you want to have different elements, contrasting elements or similar elements. Think about sports club. Like, people who design uniforms for sport clubs are quite good graphic designers. So if it works on a sport club, there's a good chance it will work on a miniature. Just for example, Milwaukee Bucks, an NBA team which has uniforms that feature green and purple. Not the auto pick, I would say, for color scheme, but they make that work. So there's a lesson to be learned there. Okay, I think the green works quite well. Kind of saturated over the dark part. So I will just go as well and do the color part with a saturated layer of green. I think I might actually. Do I want more of it? Maybe a touch more. A tad more here. So the lower section will be pure black, and this one will be green with those loose threads. Yeah, they will benefit from getting a touch of different shade. It surprises me that during the streams I'm much more productive than I would normally be. I mean, of course, the only thing I do here is like paint and talk, but then I do it for 3 hours straight. So I'm very much just committed to locking myself into the happy painter framework mindset. There is like a metallic brush, so this will be golden. There are some gold elements, I'll go over them probably in a batch at some point later on, maybe even tonight or today, which is early today if you're in Australia. But then the benefit of being early morning Wednesday in Australia is that you're closer to the weekend than we are. That's the bright side, the silver lining, because we all need silver linings. I think I will just reinforce the black slightly in the recessed areas, so avoiding the edges of the dress, I'll just fill in with quick clean moves the interior part of her dress. I think it made her look more demonic, which is fine by me. She's a witch, not a good auntie. If I was painting 3 wild guys, I would already be done with them. But there's just plenty much more detail here. And I'm not complaining. It's a good thing. So while at it, I think I may slightly reinforce the purple as well. Because why not? That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, so most of the detailing work is done now. Maybe the apples. The poisoned evil apples. I will start with red. Then I will just put some green on top of them. And then I will reinforce the red and keep the green more vivid. Because this is I've chosen dark colors for this lady's clothes. So I think it only makes sense to give this nice focal point of interest here with different color, and vivid bright green should do the trick. Yeah, there will be some like this poison dripping over those apples, so that's why I'm using bright color around them, because then once I cover it with green and highlight with yellow, it will become more distinctly noticeable. Okay. Now this raven, quote the raven nevermore. One of my favorite poems by Mr. Edgar Allan Poe. Let's just directly put. And the nice thing about birds like ravens, that when you look at them, especially when they are sitting in broad daylight, they aren't really black. You get hints of green, hints of purple. The feathering is just so much more complex than you can than meets the eye at first glance. So there is this part which will be, I think, golden or silver. I will make up my mind later on. There is also this part here which I believe will be golden. Some nice round necklace consisting of spherical, I mean not spherical, but round circles. Round, well, circles are always round, but nice circular elements. Also some details to be marked out here. And what else? Oops, here I missed a spot. So might as well do the black lining. This is a good technique to be separating different elements. So what I'm doing here is just loading the brush with black, just doing a thin separation line between the red cape and the orange blouse and yellow sleeves. And the same for the vest thing. Just helps define the miniature better. And since I will be putting in highlights and shades, it will not be that much of a stark difference between the two areas currently. See it? I think it just defines the miniature better. Okay, maybe a bit more on the edge and the trim of the dress here, of the skirt. And slightly here as well. And at the back as well. I went a bit on the edge, but that doesn't really matter because I will add some weathering later on anyway to the cape. Just make sure you get a fine tip on your brush, load it well with paint, and you're good to go. The same here when she's holding the trim of the skirt. Just gives this nice separation there. Maybe between the skin and the cape as well. Very thin line. That's what I meant. And it happened. Now the green part for the apples. For them apples. This will be used with Blackberry Flesh. Okay. I think this one needs some more green saturation. That will come later. For this one, the only element that I'm not really entirely sure of are the dolls. So while I wait for the inspiration to strike me, I will just tint the rocks that they're standing on with a few random patches of different colors, because once dry, I will dry brush it with off-white, and that will make it look like more natural rock formation. So just tinting it with different shades, with different colors. And I can go with maybe snakebite leather here, so dark brown. Just being mindful not to overdo it, because I don't want it to become too brown. Maybe I will just make it browner, slightly more brown towards the lower section rather than the upper section, because that's the section that will be closer to the swamp water. That's it. And maybe some gray just to push it slightly more from the top. Some Space Wolves gray, which is this bluish gray. Okay, so now to tackle the dolls, the voodoo dolls, the lovely voodoo dolls. Hmm. Yellow is out of question because we already got yellow going here. Not orange, not green. I want to look like a piece of cloth, so which would still be slightly different. Okay, while I ponder, I will still somehow tweak the appearance of the bark by putting Fire Slayer Flesh, which is this dark, slightly darker tone, and I will just reinforce the recesses. So this is the advantage of glazing that I mentioned earlier, that you have a lot of control over how you want the shadows to form, the recessed areas, where you want them to be, which points you can tweak less to be more focal when you look at the model for the first time. And the change is subtle, but it's there. are. Good. I actually like these dolls bright, but don't want them too bright. At the same time, I could make them darker and just their eyes like glowy green. That's also an option. That's, you see, sometimes it's a bit of a challenge when you have so many colors going on a single piece that you just need to pause and think about the next steps. So for now, actually maybe green would be a way to go. I'm thinking that I will just use Blackberry Flesh, slightly tinted with brown, and then bring it back to almost white. That could be a way to go. Of course, this would be more time consuming, but I'm fine. I have all the time in the world to fine tune the details on this one. See, and when I first base coated it, I didn't even notice that there are two voodoo dolls hanging from the branch. Just goes to show that you really need to dig deep to appreciate the quality, holly. And also those lovely voodoo dolls are tied to the branch with some kind of rope, so I'll pick it out here and there. Okay. And while I have white on the palette, I might already try to push the highlights on the doll. Maybe make it look like there is some kind of texture on it. But for now, I'm working with a color closer to the base coat. That will be a springboard for next highlights. Yeah, I think I'm quite happy with the composition here because this looks like some piece of material that's been left in the bayou to rot. So just trying to put highlights with some whitish horizontal lines. And from this side as well, just making sure I rotate it. Because those will look really, really pale in the end. That's why I'm just working on this transition from light greenish to almost white, using some kind of stippling technique for the highlights for the irregular shapes, not having this perfect smooth transition, just because I want it to look somehow like it's texture. And I will pick out the eyes because these will be given some glowy green treatment. And also make sure that there is a thin line separating the two dolls. Yep, that's more like it. And now some highlights. Again, before I lock in the highlights, I should probably wait for the paint to dry, especially in those recessed areas. I can start with this one maybe. and give it a kind of slight overbrush just to repeat some of the details that I want to further push. Well, thank you. It's been a quite productive stream with pretty solid pace throughout. So yeah, it's and good yerba to keep me energized and going. So now I'll just give it a slight overbrush to make sure I uncover the details. And just doing this off-white overbrush on the rocky formations, which I tinted with different shades of green and brown beforehand, makes it look like a natural formation where there's some moss, some dirt that's gathered over years, weeks, centuries, you name it. It's bayou, you never know. Just using the side of the brush to peek the edge of the high heel. Now that off-white, if applied carefully, you can pretty much highlight any color with it. So even red, if you work carefully. Of course, this is not like just putting red and then overbrush, because the contrast will be still too much, like here between white and red. So I'll smooth it over with reddish glazes, but this will just give it a bit more depth. That's too much of a highlight. And I think that the clothes I will make more vibrant, whereas the pumpkins will be more muted. Just to make sure that there is a clear separation and distinction between the pumpkins and pieces of material. The same on the back side of the coat. And the hair. Actually, just the faces took up most of the first hour of the stream. But then skin tone is always, it's hard to find shortcuts there. Just need some firm brushwork to establish this kind of rotten, kind of human color that I was striving for. So I would say probably the second hour of the stream has been the most productive so far. Although going late into the third, it's okay, I think I maintained the efficient pace. So now overbrushing the hair, all that picking up, make sure I repeat all the textures that got somehow lost along the way. Just very light, and this is a brush with really thick bristle, so it helps me have more control. Because with black, even with black, you just don't want to go you don't want the transitions to be too crazy, but you want them to be noticeable, and then you can play with different degrees of saturation with various colors like green works great, purple, just to name two off the top of my head. Blue is great for saturating black. Now even bolder, some bold touches here, just to, because once I glaze over that with orange, there will be a hint of texture, and I want that to be here. Oh, this is such a sad looking pumpkin. Check this out. And these pumpkins will also have somewhat glowy like this one here. So there's still plenty of work left, but I'm not in a hurry. I think that tomorrow is going to be a busy day for me because I need to travel to the office, which takes me about an hour and a half. Spend most of the day there, do a training, well, get trained because it's a external expert that's coming to have a one-to-one training session with me. Then do some office work. Then late afternoon, get back home, put the kids to sleep, read them good, well, make them a dinner or something, and maybe if I have some energy left, carry on with the work. But if not, then Thursday, Friday, plus the weekends. And well, thank you. Glad you like the skin tones. Let me just zoom in on this one for a second. It's this balance between human and witch. So by which I mean not the most healthy one. And the reason I'm so productive when it comes to painting, because just to give you an idea, last month I painted 104 saltstones worth of miniatures. It's just the consistency. There is no secret there. Just getting a few brush strokes every day in, day out. Even when I'm not feeling like painting, I kind of force myself to just put in a few brush strokes just to get things going. And once I commit to that and do it on very regular basis, it just yields effects, and the productivity rate is good. Now, for some extra vibrancy on the clothes, I will use Candy Ink Amber Orange, which is this lovely, vibrant, strong color. And you will see when I apply it to the midsection, it will immediately push the contrast further. See, there it goes. And you can just compare the two halves. So just comparing the right side to the left side, or her left hand size to her right hand size. And you will notice that the difference between the saturation of color on the cloth and on the pumpkin is significantly different. And I will still tweak it further. But the kind of bolder brush strokes that I've applied while brushing over that, see that there is a hint of material showing through, which is all I wanted. Now some red, or actually, because this one was meant to be more of orangey red, red going into the orange area. Let me just cycle back here. And now I think I just need to unclog it. Just happens that it dries and needs some extra punch. Yeah, so this is a more vibrant, well, it's still similar level of vibrancy, but a bit darker. I will further saturate it with crimson magenta. So doing a bit of a mix on my palette, just to have this rich, vibrant red, which is not fully red, but has a hint of orange, just to have limited impact on the overall composition. And as you see, it just makes the dress look like deep shade of, well, saturated orange, which is still different than the one here. So the whole build up leading up to that. So first of all, getting red, in with contrast paints, then giving this overbrush of white. You see this contrast here, the transitions here are way smoother, and this is the wow effect happens here, right? That's how I like to think of it. This is the wow effect stage where you think, wow, I didn't really do anything super advanced, yet the effect is pleasing to the eye. Well, I hope it is. Now some pure crimson magenta. And I'm kicking up the pace because we have only 15 minutes left. Less than that even. So crimson magenta. This will be applied. I need a bit more of that on the brush. This will be applied to the coat. Or to, yeah, to the cape actually. So as you can see now that I've kind of applied the same base coat, went over that with a very gentle, targeted at specific areas dry brush, I have more ease in controlling different levels of saturation. So using pretty much the same strategy, I get 3 different shades of color. One next to another. So let me just pause here for a second. I'm not sure if that is really that clearly visible. Hey, glad you like that dress cape. Thank you. I think that the detailing on these pieces is superb when it comes to the design of the model. So we got strong red, then some vibrant red, and at the front orange. And I will even push it further with, this is the fun part, right? Because it feels like I'm not doing much, yet the colors are really starting to pop. So the sleeves, they look a bit off. They look like they don't really belong to this composition. So I'll just tweak them with intensity ink, this time the yellow one called Hydromiel Yellow. Miel, I believe, is honey in Spanish. So this kicks it up a notch and makes it fit better with the composition. So there we go. Yellow is brought in line. And the pumpkins will still get some treatment to look different than the orange clothes. Now, while I have red on the palette, I can also push some red onto this blouse here. That way, the red becomes more of a focal point here. And I make sure it's not pure red by mixing in some orange to this glaze. And this is intensity ink. So this is like glossy, saturated. It won't be glossy after I've varnished it, but for now it's slightly glossy. I can also now pick out some individual strands of hair. Well, it's a deeply curly hair, so can't really talk about strands, but I'm just placing some white, off-white dots, and it already looks much more three-dimensional. Then I can glaze over that with pure yellow once the white dries off. I think she has earrings because her earlobes wouldn't be hanging so low. So that's something that I can address in the meanwhile while I wait for the white to dry. This will be such a fun crew once put together. Yeah, this is a fun crew to play for sure. So now the white dots are dry, I can go ahead and use some yellow glaze here just to bring it together and make sure that the hair looks coherent. And here's another of those small focal points. Yeah, sad but true, we are getting close to the end. It's been a busy stream and a fun one for sure. And I stick to what I said earlier. Those are by far the best reassembled word models that I've had the pleasure of painting. So again, glazing over and kicking up saturation on the legs with this bright shade of magenta. And also I will just kick it up a notch here with the hat. It's been given already like 5 different glazes or 6. I lost track. So this level of saturation that we have here took some effort, and that's why I was painting 3 miniatures simultaneously that allowed me to, for each successive glaze to dry completely before I could apply another one. And while this was drying, I just worked on other elements. So that's the benefit of working it, working on a few miniatures simultaneously. Yes, Kimberly is the champion here. Without her, things just wouldn't be happening. So always highly appreciative of your support. Glad it's also appreciated by people checking in on the stream. It's easy to take it for granted that just I come in here, everything is ready, and we're good to go. Well, it's not that simple. So again, painting a thin separation line between the two voodoo dolls, because otherwise they would look like one voodoo doll. And we should give proper respect to voodoo dolls. They are not the same. Alright, just defining the legs, maybe a bit of more definition. Those kind of separation lines, they go a long way because they need some you need some practice to be feeling comfortable putting them to selected areas, but they can really push the depth and the overall perception of the model. Just when you look at it, you see different areas, different parts of the model defined more clearly. Yeah, and I've overdone it. Talking about brush control and feeling bold, I've overdone it, but I can quickly fix it. So maybe I can also give a quick highlight to the skull. Just a few minutes left. We'll be wrapping up shortly. Just while I'm at it, might as well push the white on the skull a little bit. And push it on the bandages here, which will get a glaze of brown in a second once the white highlight is dry. But as always, much appreciated. The chat activity really helps to, and this is the fun part for me, just to get to interact with you guys. wherever you are. So for the next time, the plan for next week is to paint the Barcus, the mighty Marcus, and I will prepare a conversion using M3E Marcus, so the young god of the forest, with Bultengin head and arms. It will be tricky given it's a dynamic pose, but I have a couple of days to prepare. I think I will do it over the weekend. We'll see how it goes, but I'm very much looking forward to it. So guys, I will pause here. We have just a few minutes left, but I won't be speeding through that. I just want to give you an overview of where I ended. And this is the progress that I've made today. So quite a lot done. There are still those plenty of small touches that will really give this extra definition, like the eyes on the voodoo dolls, like those pumpkins. They don't look so good now. They need some extra love. They need to be different than the orange clothes. There are some still tweaks to be done to the edge highlights on the robes, but I'm feeling quite happy with where I got over the stream. So that will be a wrap for tonight. Thank you guys so much for your comments in the chat. Make sure to check out other streamers. Just follow Word's Instagram. You can subscribe, of course, to the Twitch channel. That way you don't lose a thing. And until next week, guys, thank you so much. Have a lovely day, evening, afternoon.